Back when I was in film school, one of my professors gave me an article he had published that was about the significance of what he called the 5 cyberfilms of 1995. 5 big-budget, high-concept Hollywood movies that dealt with the emergence of the internet age. Since I have the memory of a goldfish, I can't really remember what his thesis was, but I do remember that the article was about how pop culture deals with new technology and how the cyberpunk genre in particular was being used to explore the possibilities and pitfalls waiting for us on what we used to call the information superhighway. Since 1995 is now 30 years behind us, I thought I should revisit the topic and talk about these 5 cyberfilms. They might look antiquated and even a little ridiculous now, but back then, they were on the cutting edge of sci-fi cinema, and today, they are more relevant than you might expect.
The white hat hacker Angela Bennett has been shown a secret backdoor to the world's premier security software, Gatekeeper. And for this, she is nearly killed, has her identity stripped away, and is being hunted down by a shadowy group trying to infiltrate every computer in the world. Once reliant on the convenience of a World Wide Web at her fingertips, she now finds herself hopelessly ensnared by the net.
In 1994, Columbia Pictures wanted to make a thriller, and so the studio turned to Irwin Winkler, the prolific and multiple award-winning producer behind the Rocky series, Raging Bull, The Right Stuff, and much more. After Winkler had made his directorial debut with Guilty by Suspicion, he hired his first assistant director on that picture, Rob Cohen, to be the head of development for Winkler Film. The pair were interested in producing a dark suspense film with a female lead, something akin to the gritty spy movies of the 1970s, movies like The Parallax View. To write the script, they hired John Brancato and Michael Ferris, and their initial screenplays didn't feature a villain, because the antagonist was designed to be the faceless underbelly of the internet. Over a few rewrites, the script was given a somewhat lighter tone, and the character of Devlin was invented to give audiences a bad guy to focus on. By the end of the year, The Net was greenlit on a budget of $22 million, with Winkler agreeing to direct the movie himself. Based on her work on Demolition Man, Irwin Winkler immediately brought in Sandra Bullock, who won the filmmakers over in their first meeting. She had already made a splash with 1994's hit film Speed, and she was wise enough to not sign on without some unspecified concessions, but by October, she finally agreed. Since the movie hinges on her performance, Bullock is essential to making it work, and indeed she does a great job being a likable character while also being semi-believable as a computer nerd who happens to have Hollywood looks. Jack Devlin, on the other hand, took much longer to cast, with auditions coming very close to the start of filming before Jeremy Northam walked in. Northam was an acclaimed Shakespearean stage actor who had only appeared in a few British films, most of them for television. Winkler loved the idea of having a well-trained actor that American audiences wouldn't recognize, and for his part, Devlin makes for a good homme fatale, though not a particularly believable hacker. Meanwhile, Dennis Miller plays the secondary love interest with the ironic name Dr. Champion. Unlike Northam, Miller, well known for his many years at SNL, was chosen due to his lack of professional acting experience, as his improvisational style made for a good foil against Bullock's more rigid one. He also provides a little much-needed comic relief during the second act, and his sleazy psychiatrist character manages to be charming enough that you feel bad when he dies. And sorry folks, but 30 years is long enough for the statute of limitations to have expired on spoiler alerts. Other actors worth noting are Diane Baker as Mrs. Bennett, Ken Howard as the Undersecretary of Defense Michael Bergstrom, Ray McKinnon as Dale, Louis Gossett Jr.'s cousin Robert Gossett as Ben Phillips, L. Scott Caldwell as the Public Defender, the real-life reporter Daniel Shore, and cameos from multiple family members of Irwin Winkler, including his wife, Margot Winkler, and 3 sons, Charles, David, and Adam Winkler. Charles, as this cop, is the only one I'm confident on. I've spent way too much time on this to let it go, though, so help a geek out, will ya? The other 2 are credited as computer technician and computer nerd, which narrows it down to about 80% of the characters. And for reference, here's some more recent photos of them. Happy hunting! Filming took place over 4 months at the start of 1995, beginning at San Francisco's Moscone Center during the Macworld Expo on January 5th. It was Winkler, an avid Apple fan, who decided to turn the movie into a none-too-subtle advertisement for the Mac. Other locations include the McKesson Building in San Francisco, Haynes Point in Washington, D.C., City Hall in Pasadena, Santa Monica Boulevard and the Santa Monica Pier, the LA Convention Center and LAX Airport, and both Frenchman's Cove and Paradise Cove on the coast of Southern California. Many locations were chosen specifically for their connections to Alfred Hitchcock movies, because the net borrows heavily from Hitchcock films like Strangers on a Train and Notorious. To make the computer scenes as realistic as possible, they consulted the brothers Harold and Alex Mann, who had previously worked on Drop Zone and Species. The pair were tech experts, and as such, were given free rein to design the images flashing across multiple computer screens throughout the movie. They knew what the real software looked like at the time, had a good idea what it would look like a few years into the future, and also recognized the needs of a Hollywood production, all of which they balanced accordingly to create something that looks closer to reality than pretty much any other movie of the time period. The music was composed by Mark Isham, who had previously scored A River Runs Through It, Fire in the Sky, and Nell, and I mention that because the soundtrack is one of my favorite things about the entire movie. It mixes a traditional thriller score with more eclectic styles without being too distracting or over the top. I wish I could play some clips to explain myself, but, you know, YouTube and copyright and all that. The Net released on July 28, 1995 to middling reviews, but it nevertheless did good business, grossing over $110 million at the worldwide box office. It spawned a 22-episode television series in 1998, and a direct-to-video sequel, The Net 2.0, directed by Charles Winkler in 2006. Generally speaking, it's not the most well-remembered of the 5 cyberfilms, but it also isn't picked on as much as the others. It's mostly only talked about because of Sandra Bullock. And I'll be honest, when I decided to cover these movies, I had no idea what I was going to say about The Net, seeing as how I only vaguely remembered it as a bog-standard techno-thriller that my mom really likes. However, seeing it with fresh eyes 30 years later, I'm genuinely surprised by how good it is, especially if you compare it to other 90s movies that tried to tackle the subjects of hacking and the internet. It has its flaws, to be sure. The dialogue is dull, the villain isn't particularly good, Miller and Bullock don't have much chemistry, and there are plenty of laughable Hollywood computer moments.
God damn it, you're in the mainframe. It's eating through Greg's entire system, Devlin. Do something.
But Winkler is clearly a skilled director doing his best to channel classic Hitchcock and the neo-noirs of the 1970s. The film geek in me loves all the visual metaphors he uses too. For example, the opening shot features Angela boxed in isolation, and the closing shot shows her walking out of that box and embracing the outside world, which is just the filmmaker's way of telling you to touch grass. And let's face it, that theme is more relevant than ever in 2025. The Net, it turns out, was incredibly prophetic in that it predicted terminally online culture, of the ability for anyone to get anything they need, even pizza delivery, from the comfort of their computer screens. And all it costs is, ironically enough, your privacy and your identity. It also brings up serious issues in the cybersecurity sphere that are still being tackled today, with monopolistic software that could be hiding backdoors and code vulnerabilities for any group of determined black hats to exploit. Indeed, the decentralized villains of the story, the Praetorians, are analogous to groups like Anonymous and Equation Group, and the idea of a single piece of vulnerable software being used by multiple sensitive organizations is an all-too-real threat in the wake of things like the infamous SolarWinds Orion hack. I gave the writers grief earlier for their dialogue, so let me now applaud their research. In terms of accurately predicting the future, The Net is by far the standout cyberfilm of 1995. So, looking back on it now, The Net is worth reevaluating, not just as a good thriller, but as a prescient warning sign of things to come. And that's all for today, my fellow Earthlings. What's your favorite techno-thriller? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching, and until next time, when we'll find out what woggles are, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love. As long as you're not hurting anybody.
Seldane, the antihistamine of champions.